After 60 years, Robert Duvall finally speaks out. I couldn't stand these four people. It's been more than 60 years since Robert Duvall was seen as an honest and great actor in the movie business, the kind of talent that both fans and co-worker looked up to. Serious, well-behaved, and known for keeping to themselves. He was the very definition of a worker. Still, deep down, old hurts have been lingering behind that calm exterior. He had never wanted to remember those things again until now. The 94-year-old Oscar-winning star who helped make some of the best movies ever finally said the things he had been holding back his whole life in an interview that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Four stars' names that he just couldn't stand. Duvall is said to have said, "I've kept my mouth shut for decades. But what am I waiting for now that I'm this old? Now is the time to be honest." The news shocked the business world. Robert Duvall, who has long been thought of as Hollywood's perfect gentleman, said it, not just because of what he said, but also because of who said it. The actor who never seemed to say anything bad about anyone. He broke his quiet after 50 years, which shows that these wounds were so deep that they followed him into his 10th decade. People who knew the star well said that these problems were more than just personality clashes. They changed how things were made, how people were acted, and sometimes even how great movies we thought we knew ended. Now that Duvall has finally decided to come out, Hollywood waits with bated breath. What are the four names? What facts have been hidden behind those golden movie set smiles and stories? Before we talk about the four names that have shocked Hollywood, we need to know why Robert Duvall, who is known as one of the most private and controlled people in the business, finally broke his lifelong silence. People who knew him well say that he didn't make the choice out of anger or sorrow at all. It came from a deeper place, a time of thought that many people have near the end of their lives. A close friend who asked to remain anonymous said that Robert got to a point where he thought the historical record needed to be fixed. He has spent years watching Hollywood films and retrospectives tell stories that aren't true, like how bad relationships are turned into stories of friendship and peace. People didn't understand how much that distortion worried him. Reports say the final trigger was pulled during a recent salute to Duvall's long and impressive career. During the show, he watched montage of his most famous roles, including ones with actors he had privately disliked for decades. All the while, the story talked about great collaborations and deep friendships that never happened. Duvall told his interviewer, "I sat there listening to all that revisionist nonsense about mutual respect and creative partnerships while remembering how one of those people used to step on my lines on purpose to mess up takes and another tried to get me fired from what became one of my signature roles." At age 94, Duvall decided there was no reason to keep up Hollywood's carefully constructed illusions any longer. More importantly, he felt a sense of responsibility toward the next generation. These young actors deserve to know the truth. "Even the greatest films are not always born of harmony," he said. "Sometimes they come from conflict, jealousy, and difficult circumstances behind the scenes." The first name, Dustin Hoffman, the credit thief who never stopped. The third name on Duvall's unprecedented list shocked many precisely because of how closely their early paths once aligned. Dustin Hoffman, like Duvall, began as a struggling character actor before rising to leading man status. "Dustin and I were struggling actors together in New York," Duvall recalled. "We were friends, or at least I thought we were, but friendship meant something very different to him than it did to me." Their connection began in the early 1960s when the two shared a tiny apartment in New York City, scraping by while auditioning for stage roles. What started as camaraderie soon turned into quiet rivalry. According to Duvall, Hoffman often used their rehearsal sessions as opportunities to borrow his creative ideas. "I'd work for weeks on a particular interpretation for an audition," Duvall explained. "I'd practice it in our apartment. Then Dustin would get called for the same part out of the blue, and he'd copy my ideas word for word." Hoffman would say that Duvall had influenced him when he got the parts. Duvall said, "That's just a fancy word for theft." This pattern, Duvall said, ran even after both men became famous in Hollywood. Duvall played the bad guy Ned Pepper in True Grit in 1969. Hoffman would call him a lot to get tips on voice work and character development for Midnight Cowboy, which was being filmed at the same time. Duvall said, "I helped him find Ratso Rizzo's voice for hours on those calls. He said he came up with the vocal patterns by watching homeless people in New York for months, which I read in an article. Never brought up our talks." A few years later, when both guys were being considered for the lead role in The French Connection 1971, things finally broke down. A part that went to Gene Hackman in the end. "That's when I stopped answering his calls. Some people never stop taking from others. They just get better at pretending it's collaboration. Duvall said. Since then, production sources have confirmed Duvall's story, saying Dustin Hoffman did more than just steal ideas. Hoffman allegedly told director William Friedkin that Duvall was difficult and unwilling to work with him during the casting process for The French Connection. He used their early experiences in theater as proof. Duvall thinks that the way he was portrayed cost him the part that could have changed his future. As Duvall put it, that went from being expert competition to planned sabotage. After many years, Duvall told Hoffman about the story. Duvall remembered that he denied it. I heard it from Friedkin himself though. Even though he was angry with Hoffman behind the scenes, Duvall was friendly with him in public for decades, going to the same events, speaking on panels, and even complimenting Hoffman's performances. This air of efficiency is what made the news so shocking in Hollywood. Many people didn't know that two actors who were long praised as among the best of their time were actually quite hostile toward each other. But if Duvall's statement about Hoffman shocked the entertainment business, his last confession really shocked everyone in the business. It named a man whose image must have been impossible to damage. The second name is Marlon Brando, and he has the worst ego I've ever met. Duvall said that in Hollywood, good ties don't always lead to great performances. They come out sometimes even when bad ones are around. The truth about this industry is something few are willing to admit, and with his trademark bluntness he finally said it out loud. Then he began naming names, shocking an industry built on polished illusions and polite silence. The first name he mentioned stunned even the most seasoned Hollywood insiders. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando had the most destructive ego I've ever encountered, Duvall said without hesitation. It wasn't surprising because Brando was unknown. Far from it. He was Marlon Brando, considered by many the greatest actor of all time. Duvall didn't deny Brando's brilliance. He was a genius, no question, he admitted. But he was also the most destructive ego I ever met in this business, a man who would sabotage entire productions just to prove he could. Their biggest confrontation happened during the chaotic filming of The Chase in 1966, a movie mostly forgotten today, despite its star-studded cast. Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, Jane Fonda, and Robert Redford. What audiences never realized was that behind the scenes a psychological battle was unfolding, one that permanently shaped Duvall's understanding of acting and professionalism. According to Duvall, Brando would intentionally change his performance from take to make editing impossible. If he disliked the director's approach, he would deliberately ruin other actors' coverage. Brando called it protecting the integrity of the performance. Duvall called it professional sabotage. The tension eventually reached a breaking point during a crucial monologue, one of Duvall's most important scenes in the film. Multiple sources have since confirmed that Brando repeatedly disrupted the moment by making tiny, almost invisible noises off-camera during Duvall's takes. The sounds were soft enough that only the microphones caught them, forcing take after take to be redone. After the fifth ruined take, I confronted him. Duvall recalled, what happened next became a defining moment, not only in his relationship with Brando, but in his understanding of the quiet brutality hidden beneath Hollywood's glamorous facade. Brando just smiled and said, maybe you should be stronger in your choices. Duvall paused before adding, that was Marlon. He'd sabotage you, then make it seem like it was your weakness. What makes this revelation so striking is how completely it overturns the public perception of their relationship. For decades, Duvall praised Brando's artistry in interviews, calling him an influence, while quietly carrying the bitterness of that experience. The two later appeared in The Godfather, though they shared no scenes, something that now feels far less accidental. I learned more from watching Marlon than from anyone else, Duvall said. But the lesson wasn't just about acting. I learned how not to treat colleagues. I learned that genius doesn't excuse cruelty. This complicated mix of admiration and resentment, respect for Brando's immense talent combined with disgust for his arrogance, explains why Duvall stayed silent for so long. But if naming Brando shook Hollywood, the next name he revealed was even more unexpected. The third name, James Caan, competitive to the point of hostility. Duvall's mention of Caan hit especially hard among Hollywood insiders. Caan, his co-star from The Godfather, became iconic as the fiery Sonny Corleone, just as Duvall's calm, calculating Tom Hagen did. Together they created what many critics call one of the most authentic brotherly dynamics ever filmed. "Jimmy and I created one of the most believable brother relationships in movie history," Duvall said. "And we did it while barely speaking to each other off camera." According to Duvall, the tension between them started early in the first rehearsals for The Godfather, when both men were trying to get ahead in the ensemble. Duvall, who was known for being very well prepared and professional, kept falling behind Caan, who was always trying to get ahead. "Jimmy was competitive to the point of malice," Duvall remembered. "He deliberately tried to upstage everyone, especially me. He would suddenly do something with his hands or make funny faces if I had an important line or moment coming up. He did this to get people's attention." Reports say that the rivalry got worse during the famous family meeting scene where the Corleones talked about whether to go to war with the Tatalayas. Duvall and director Francis Ford Coppola were quietly talking about Tom Hagen's motivations between takes when Caan walked in with a smirk and said something rude about overthinking parts like honored secretary. "That's when I made up my mind that we would never be friends," Duvall said firmly. "I also made up my mind that Tom Hagen would always carefully watch Sonny in every scene. It made the performance better because that's what a consolier would do with Sonny, who is a hothead." This news is especially shocking because of how well both actors were able to hide their dislike for each other over decades of public appearances, press tours, anniversary events, and endless Godfather reunions. In conversations they were friendly and warm, making it look like they had been brothers for a long time. "We both knew what was at stake when we were pushing the movie," he said. "We weren't going to let small things get in the way of something so important. So, we smiled, told the right stories and played our parts." That's also playing. Robert Duvall's quiet professionalism and desire to protect the work even though he felt deeply wronged says more about his honesty than any award could. It also explains how these disagreements were able to stay hidden for so long, under decades of red carpets and practiced love. But while his fights with Brando and Caan were mostly business-related, Duvall's third reveal was much more personal. He made it sound like this one was personal. Robert Redford is the fourth name. He is the fake behind the golden image. The last and possibly most shocking name on Duvall's list belonged to Robert Redford, who was known as Hollywood's golden boy and was known for his ease, intelligence, and honesty. For many years, Redford's reputation as a serious artist, environmentalist, and supporter of independent film had been spotless, almost impossible to fault. Redford made a great public image for himself. As Duvall put it, "I saw the serious craftsman, the idealist, the man of principle, but what I actually saw was something completely different." Behind that polished exterior, Duvall said, was a calculating opportunist who saw crew members as furniture and fellow actors as obstacles. In 1984's The Natural, Duvall played sportswriter Max Mercy opposite Redford's famous baseball hero Roy Hobbs. This is where their bad relationship began. When Duvall saw how Redford treated the production team, what should have been a smooth working relationship quickly turned bad. He would keep entire crews waiting for hours while he prepared, Duvall said. Not because he was deep in character work. He was on the phone making business deals while everyone else was sitting around on their salary while the day went by. That's not artistry. That's arrogance. Things got tense on set, and it reached a peak during filming of their important confrontation scenes, where personal tension started to seep into their acting, creating an intensity that the camera caught but no one fully understood at the time. Duvall says that Robert Redford's polished image of an honest artist hit a much more self-serving plan on set. Duvall said that while The Natural was being made, Redford kept telling director Barry Levinson to cut down Duvall's part. He supposedly said that some scenes, especially the ones where Max Mercy questioned Roy Hobbs's brave story, didn't add anything to the story. It was clear that he saw anyone strong standing across from him as a danger. Duvall said this wasn't about making the movie better. Making sure he won every frame was the point. He saw the irony. Redford was playing a character whose reputation was in danger because of a study by a reporter, but behind the scenes he was trying to hide the part that reporters played in the movie. What really annoyed Duvall was how hypocritical everything was, how Redford's public image as a workaholic was very different from how he behaved when he was alone. Duvall remembered that he would stand on stage at Sundance and talk about the purity of art, then he'd go back to a movie set and demand to be in charge of the final cut and have the power to stop other stars from being cast. The gap between how he looked and how he really was huge. But the worst part was when they were shown after the auction on The Natural. Duvall talked to Redford directly about what he was doing behind the scenes. Crew members who saw the conversation say what happened next is something Duvall has never forgotten. It was like Redford looked at me and said, "You're a character actor, Bob. I'm a movie star. We're not playing by the same rules." Duvall agreed that that moment made everything clear. The scam behind the golden picture. I changed the way I looked at him forever. Perhaps more than any of the others, this last admission has shocked Hollywood the most. Going from one Robert to another has made the business look at not only Robert Redford's carefully kept image, but also the whole story of Hollywood's good guys again. Those shiny pictures that might finally be getting old. Because of what Duvall said, Hollywood is still reeling from the shock. For days after his shocking interview, the movie business has been a mix of shock, rejection, confirmation, and self-reflection. Representatives for Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, the only living stars Duvall named by name, have carefully worded statements expressing shock at his descriptions while expressing their deep appreciation for his contributions to the film industry. But what's more telling is the quiet wave of people in the business who have come forward to confirm parts of Duvall's story. A lot of people who worked on The Natural have similar stories about how Redford behaved at the beginning. A former assistant director on The Godfather also said that there was clear tension between Duvall and James Caan while they were shooting. While Francis Ford Coppola wouldn't say exactly what was going on, he did say that the chemistry you see on screen is sometimes the result of very complicated human relationships that happen behind the camera. More importantly, people close to Duvall say that a number of well-known actors have quietly thanked him for saying what many of us have felt but never felt safe enough to say. When it comes to Duvall, he doesn't seem troubled or sad about breaking decades of silence. In a short statement afterward, he made it clear that his intention wasn't to hurt anyone's reputation, but to fix a history book that had been so cleaned up that it was almost fiction. And he wrote, "I've given 60 years to this industry and have always treated it with respect. Part of that respect means being honest about its realities, both good and bad." Duvall made it clear that these weren't small disagreements or short fights, but long-lasting actions that hurt productions and people's ability to make a living. He thinks those facts should be written down in history, not just the version that has been edited so that everyone agrees it is true. As the entertainment world continues to think about these shocking new details, one question still stands. Does Duvall have any more facts to share? His vague last word in the interview makes people wonder what he meant. Those four were the only ones that stood out. Hollywood has always been better at making up stories than facing facts. Now might be a good time to do the opposite.